Study Dojo. Ah, not again. I slumped onto my desk, letting out a sigh. My name is Kenta. In front of me was a math test paper, riddled with red X's. Again, I'd scored below the average. How many times had I seen this scene? Ever since starting junior high, nothing's been going well with my studies. I was doing okay in elementary school, but since starting junior high, it feels like I've suddenly hit a wall. Math and English, especially, are a struggle. When the teacher explains things, I feel like I understand, but when I try to solve problems myself, my hands just won't move. Maybe I'm just not cut out for studying. The thought suddenly crossed my mind. My friends all get good grades on tests and solve difficult problems with ease. Compared to them, I always feel like I'm walking along behind, plodding along. A sense of impatience and self-loathing gripped my chest. There are a lot of smart kids in my class. Like Yuto, who's kind of the center of attention. He's always smiling and kind to everyone. He's good at both studies and sports, practically perfect. He'd never brag about his test results, but when I see him casually solving hard problems, I think, he's amazing. And then there's Shota, the class's mood maker. He loves to make people laugh and always has the class in stitches. Even before tests, he doesn't seem stressed at all, playing games and reading manga. But when the tests come around, he gets surprisingly good grades, which is incredible. Watching them makes me feel even more inadequate. They seem to enjoy school life so much, but my mind is always filled with thoughts about studying. It's like I'm the only one lost in a maze. Even during class today, I couldn't focus on what the teacher was saying. Looking at the textbook, I didn't know where to even start. Shota next to me was doodling in his notebook, but I bet he was still listening to the teacher, wasn't he? As test time approaches, I get more and more depressed. When I open my textbook, my head starts to ache and my concentration breaks. It's as if studying is rejecting me. I just want to give up studying altogether. Sometimes I get that impulse. But somewhere in my heart, there's a feeling that I don't want to give up. I don't want to end up hating studying for the rest of my life. When I get home, my mom asks, "How was your day?" like she always does. Sighing, I just answered, "It was bad again." She looked worried, but she didn't say anything and just patted me on the shoulder. "Let's try our best again from tomorrow," she said. Her words were kind, but they felt a little heavy to me right now. I had no idea how to try my best from tomorrow. Before going to bed, I was messing around on my phone when I found an interesting video. It was titled, "Why are you not getting results from studying? Here are the 4 causes." Maybe this video can help solve my problems. With a glimmer of hope, I tapped the video. In the video, the narrator, a man, spoke confidently and clearly. He talked about lack of concentration due to illness, learning materials not suited to your level, teachers who aren't good at teaching, and setting the wrong goals. Maybe the reasons I'm struggling with studying aren't just one thing. Until now, I had only blamed my own lack of ability, but maybe there were other reasons. That thought made me feel a little more positive. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to investigate the reasons why I'm struggling with study. I pledged to myself before drifting off to sleep. The next day, Kenta went to school, remembering what he saw in the video. For some reason, his step felt lighter than usual. Okay, today, I'll thoroughly investigate why I'm struggling with studying. Full of resolve, he entered the classroom, where Yuto and Shota were laughing and talking as usual. Kenta felt a slight envy for them. During class, Kenta was going over the 4 causes discussed in the video. Illness. Could it be me? Learning materials. Maybe they're not suited to my level. The teacher. He is a bit hard to understand sometimes. Goals. Come to think of it, I haven't thought about anything other than getting good scores on tests. For Kenta, who had been just studying aimlessly, these reasons were truly eye-opening. Maybe it really isn't just my fault. That made him feel a little relieved. After school, Kenta made up his mind and went to his homeroom teacher. "Teacher, I have something I want to talk about," he began, and the teacher readily agreed to listen. Kenta told the teacher about the content of the video he had watched yesterday. The teacher looked a little surprised and listened intently to what Kenta had to say. "I see, there's that perspective too," the teacher said, acknowledging Kenta's thoughts. "Indeed, the study method that suits each student may be different. And sometimes people aren't feeling well," the teacher added. Kenta felt a bit encouraged by the teacher's words. The teacher gave Kenta a variety of advice, citing examples from past students. "Maybe you should get your health checked out. Also, it might be a good idea to try different learning materials, not just the textbook." Following the teacher's advice, Kenta decided to start by checking his own health. "Maybe what I thought was just tiredness is actually due to a health problem," he thought. So Kenta checked his physical condition after returning home. Recently, he felt tired all the time. He had been feeling spaced out often in class. In particular, his rhinitis had been terrible since spring, and he had many days when he couldn't think clearly. Could this be the reason? Kenta, considering the possibility that the rhinitis was affecting his concentration on his studies, decided to visit an ear, nose and throat specialist the next day. At the hospital, he was diagnosed with allergic rhinitis and was prescribed medication. After taking the medication, he could feel his head, which had been foggy until then, gradually clearing up. "I've been studying in this condition all this time." Kenta realized the importance of knowing his own physical condition. After taking care of his health, it was time to focus on learning materials. Kenta decided to look for materials that matched his level. He went to the bookstore and looked at various reference books. For Kenta, who had only solved problems from his textbook before, the world of reference books felt like unknown territory. Which one should I choose? Feeling overwhelmed by the number of reference books, Kenta decided to buy the easiest looking workbook for now. When he tried solving the problems in the workbook at home, many of them were surprisingly easy to solve. "Maybe I can solve simple problems after all?" Kenta regained a little confidence and decided to consult his teacher next. "Teacher, I want to talk to you about learning materials." Kenta told the teacher that he wanted to find learning materials that matched his level. The teacher then introduced Kenta to workbooks and reference books that were appropriate for his level. "If you look carefully, you can find the right learning materials for you." Kenta realized the importance of choosing materials. At this point, Kenta still believed that the reasons he was struggling with studying were related to his health and learning materials. It was like he was just standing at the entrance to a maze, not knowing what kind of paths lay ahead. Maybe everything is connected. A thought like that suddenly crossed Kenta's mind, but he couldn't yet understand what it meant. Having somewhat addressed the health and learning material issues, Kenta then turned his attention to the teacher. The teacher's teaching style. During class, Kenta carefully listened to the teacher's words. Indeed, the teacher's class was just explaining the textbook content one-sidedly, and he didn't find it very interesting. Even when he wanted to ask a question, he couldn't quite find the timing, and the teacher seemed busy, which made it hard to approach him. Maybe the teacher's teaching style doesn't suit me. With this thought, Kenta decided to consult his friend Yuto. Yuto always listened to the class carefully and got good grades on tests. He was sure to give good advice. After school, Kenta stopped Yuto and confessed his worries. "Actually, I find the teacher's classes a bit hard to understand." Yuto listened to Kenta's story sincerely. "Yeah, the teacher's classes might be a bit one-sided, but I think he's doing his best to teach. Also, teachers might have areas where they are good at and areas where they aren't," Yuto said, defending the teacher while also understanding Kenta's feelings. "If you find the class hard to understand, it might be a good idea to actively ask questions yourself. I'm sure the teacher will answer them properly," Yuto advised. Following Yuto's advice, Kenta decided to try asking questions actively in the next class. After class, Kenta rushed over to the teacher and asked about the parts he didn't understand. However, the teacher looked a bit annoyed and simply said, If you read the textbook carefully, you'll understand. Kenta was a little shocked. Perhaps the teacher didn't understand how the students felt. Kenta decided to try consulting another teacher next. It was the PE teacher. The PE teacher always understood how the students felt and was very kind when listening to their concerns. Kenta explained his worries to the PE teacher. The teacher said with a smile, "I see. There are all kinds of teachers. Some teachers are good at academics and some aren't. And it's normal for different teachers to have different teaching styles." The teacher started talking about his past experiences. "I used to struggle with studying too. I really hated English in particular. But one time, I met a teacher who was very easy to understand, and I started to like English." The teacher continued, "That's why it's important for you to find a teacher that suits you. If you feel like your current teacher isn't right for you, you could try asking other teachers questions or consider a tutor or cram school." Kenta was really encouraged by the teacher's words. The teacher also struggled with studying in the past, and he overcame that by finding a teacher that suited him. Maybe cram school or a tutor is an option too. Kenta looked into cram schools and tutors. He found out that cram schools and tutors provided instruction tailored to each student. While looking into cram schools and tutors, Kenta was able to form a specific image of what kind of teacher he wanted to learn from. A teacher who understands the feelings of students, teaches in a way that is easy to understand, and provides guidance at the student's own pace. Maybe I can find a teacher like that. Kenta felt a bit of hope. And finally, Kenta started to address the issue of setting goals. Until now, Kenta had only thought about getting good scores on tests. He had never deeply considered the fundamental question, why am I studying? Kenta reflected on his past experiences. He liked reading picture books when he was in elementary school. He particularly loved reading books about stars and space. Maybe I am interested in space. Upon realizing this, Kenta started reading various books about space. Then, studying, which had been painful until now, started to feel a little fun. I want to know more about space. For that, I need knowledge of science and math. Thinking this way, studying, which he had disliked until now, started to seem like something that had meaning. Kenta decided to set a concrete goal. It was to work hard on studying in order to deepen his knowledge of space. Maybe studying is an important tool for realizing my dreams. Thinking this way, Kenta's motivation for studying gradually increased. Kenta had regained his confidence through knowledge, but reality was not so simple. He adjusted his health, chose materials that suited him, gathered information about cram schools and tutors, and made his goals clear. He thought this was perfect. But when he actually started studying, it didn't go as planned. He realized that what he thought he understood was actually something he did not understand at all. When solving reference books and workbooks, he couldn't solve the problems without looking at the answers right away. Even after taking a trial lesson at a cram school, he couldn't completely understand what the teacher was saying. Is knowledge alone not enough? Kenta realized that the knowledge he had acquired was just that knowledge. In order to make the knowledge his own, he needed a deeper understanding. I understand what the teacher is saying, but how do I get to a point where I can do it myself? Kenta realized that he was just passively receiving knowledge and had given up thinking for himself. Studying was like having a high wall standing in front of him. Even when trying to climb the wall, his hands would slip and he'd fall right back down. No matter how hard he tried, he didn't feel like he was progressing at all. Maybe I'm just not cut out for studying after all. Even after having been motivated, he was starting to have self-deprecating thoughts again. It seemed that his friends were all progressing ahead, yet he was just stuck in the same place. Math, in particular, was like a huge wall standing before Kenta. He'd been somehow getting by until now, but as the level of difficulty increased, he could no longer fudge his way through. Even if he memorized the formulas, he didn't know how to use them. When trying to solve the problems, he didn't know where to even begin. This is absolutely impossible. Kenta had thought that many times. He was tempted to throw his reference book away, slump onto his desk, and fall asleep. He was losing the meaning of studying and felt like giving everything up. When he was looking into cram schools and tutors, he applied for a trial lesson at the cram school that seemed the best. The teacher at the cram school was very kind and taught him diligently. But Kenta couldn't completely understand the teacher's explanation. "You still don't understand the fundamentals. You need to start from there," the teacher said. The teacher's words were kind, but they deeply wounded Kenta's heart. "So, even the fundamental stuff is something I don't understand. Why am I the only one who can't do it?" Kenta fell into self-loathing again. "Why do I have to suffer so much when my friends don't seem to be struggling so much?" After the trial lesson at the cram school, Kenta stopped by a park on his way home. Sitting on a bench, he looked up at the sky, which was covered with gloomy clouds. "I want to give everything up," Kenta muttered to himself. At that moment, the elementary school children playing in the park talked to Kenta. "Hey mister, what's wrong? You don't look well." The elementary school kids looked at Kenta with innocent eyes. Kenta remembered when he was in elementary school, feeling frustrated because he couldn't understand his studies. At that time, he had wished that he could be able to study someday. "If I give up now, I'll be letting down my past self," Kenta thought. Then, he remembered a phrase from a video he had seen, Motivation 3.0 by Daniel Pink. True motivation cannot be created by rewards and punishments. It is important to be aware of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. "I have certainly been bound by rewards and punishments like getting good grades on tests. If I can find something that I really want to do and set goals myself, I might be able to enjoy studying more." At that moment, Kenta realized that he had been passively doing what someone else had told him to do. "Maybe I have been giving up on thinking and acting for myself." Kenta realized that he didn't have any autonomy. "I can't just rely on others. I have to do something about this myself." With that, Kenta decided to try to stand up again. Although Kenta was determined to stand up again, reality was even harsher. "I'll do something about this myself." Even though he had decided that, he had no idea what to do concretely. No matter what he tried, it didn't go well. His aversion to studying just grew stronger. Math, in particular, remained a high wall. Even when he tried to understand the formulas, his head would get tangled up. When he tried to solve problems, he had no idea where to even start. "I'm just no good." Self-deprecating thoughts started swirling in his mind. His friends were moving ahead. He felt like he was the only one left behind. He consulted the cram school teacher again. "Teacher, I still don't understand math at all." The teacher listened to Kenta's concerns carefully. "Kenta, you may be rushing things a bit. Let's start with a solid understanding of the fundamentals." The teacher handed Kenta a fundamental problem set. Reluctantly, Kenta started working through it. But even when he was solving the problems, he didn't seem to be making any progress. It was as if he was grasping at sand, with knowledge slipping out of his hands. "Maybe it's all just pointless, no matter what I do." Kenta had completely lost heart. It was like he was trapped in a deep darkness where nothing he did would be rewarded. Past failures flashed through Kenta's mind. When he was in elementary school, he got bad test scores and was scolded by his parents. During his least favorite classes, he was always dozing off and got scolded by the teachers. He had always been ashamed of his inability to study. "I'm just not cut out for studying, after all." Kenta had completely lost hope in himself. Not wanting to go home, he just sat on the park bench, just blankly watching the time go by. At that moment, Kenta happened to find a space encyclopedia that he had read in elementary school on his tablet. When he opened the book, pictures of beautiful nebulae and spectacular views of space spread out before him. How enthusiastically he had read this encyclopedia as a child. Kenta immersed himself in the book after a long time. He then noticed that there were many difficult mathematical formulas and physical laws in the encyclopedia. Maybe I need knowledge of math and physics to understand space? That thought suddenly occurred to Kenta. Math and physics, which had only been painful until now, connected to his interest in space. Maybe I want to know more about space. Kenta realized his true desires that were deep inside his heart. Until now, he had only been studying because he was told to do so. He had never studied out of his own will. Maybe I don't hate studying itself, but studying things that have no meaning. Kenta thought that if he was studying things that were linked to his interests, he might be able to enjoy it. Kenta also realized his strengths. He had only been looking at his weaknesses and self-deprecating himself. But when he thought about it, he had liked reading encyclopedias and books since he was in elementary school. And he was good at thinking deeply about things. Maybe I was just studying the wrong way. Kenta was losing confidence because he was only looking at his weaknesses. But when he thought about it, he had overcome many difficulties in the past. There was a time when he was bullied in elementary school, but he was able to recover with the help of his friends. When he had just started junior high, he had no friends and felt lonely. But he made friends by mustering up the courage to talk to others. Maybe I'm surprisingly strong. Kenta realized an unexpected side of himself. Guided by the words in the encyclopedia, Kenta stood up again. The feeling of despair and self-deprecation until now had disappeared as if it were a lie. And Kenta's heart was now overflowing with hope. Knowledge is just a tool. What's important is how you use that knowledge. He repeated the words in the encyclopedia in his heart. That's right, until now, I had just been focused on memorizing information. I had never been conscious of using knowledge. Kenta reaffirmed his interest in space and started by connecting that interest with his studies. In order to understand space, I need knowledge of math and physics, and I need to be able to use that knowledge. Kenta opened his math textbook again, and this time, he focused on solving problems related to space. For example, problems involving calculating the orbits of planets, and problems involving finding the speed of spaceships. Then, surprisingly, he started to understand the formulas that he had been unable to understand until now. He was able to feel that the formulas weren't just a series of symbols, but expressions of the laws of the universe. So that's what it meant. Kenta felt great emotion when he realized that the formulas that he had only memorized were actually being used to explain the phenomena of space. Kenta researched the various formulas that were in the encyclopedia. For example, before reading the formulas, first read the formulas and the explanations carefully. If there are things you don't understand, don't look at the explanations right away. Try to think about it thoroughly for yourself. If you couldn't understand a formula, be sure to analyze why you couldn't understand it and where you didn't understand it. In the process of understanding the formulas himself, Kenta realized how superficial his studies had been until now. Kenta started spending all of his time at the library, reading every book on space that he could get his hands on. He thoroughly researched the areas he was interested in, such as the origin of the universe, the structure of planets, and the history of space. Then, he gained a feeling as if knowledge that he had only understood fragmentarily until now was connecting like a line. It felt like connecting the dots. Space is so interesting. Kenta stopped seeing studying as a painful thing, and instead started seeing it as an enjoyable activity for pursuing his interests. Kenta also told his teacher at the cram school about his changes. "Thank you, teacher. I'm really enjoying studying now." The teacher was surprised by Kenta's changes, but was also very happy for him. "Kenta, you've really changed. You were able to find your own way of studying," the teacher said. Kenta passionately told the teacher about space and what he was studying now. Then, perhaps moved by Kenta's enthusiasm, the teacher started supporting Kenta's studies even more diligently than before. And Kenta was able to realize his own growth. He could now easily solve problems that he couldn't solve at all before. He now found subjects that he had no interest in before to be very enjoyable. Studying is so interesting. Kenta truly thought that from the bottom of his heart. Studying was no longer painful. It was an enjoyable activity for pursuing his interests and expanding his possibilities. Kenta, who had been a bundle of self-deprecation before, was now overflowing with confidence. He believed that he had his own strengths and that he could do anything as long as he pursued his interests. I can overcome any difficulty by my own power. Kenta gained absolute confidence in himself, and Kenta realized what he truly wanted. It wasn't about getting good grades on tests or being praised by his parents. It was about pursuing his interests and drawing out his potential to the fullest. I want to know more about space. To do that, I need to work even harder at studying. Kenta once again made his goals clear, and Kenta read the last words in the encyclopedia and quietly closed his tablet. You can walk on your own now. A few months later, Kenta had changed beyond recognition. He no longer just listened in school classes. He now actively asked questions and expressed his opinions. He now actively participated in math classes, which he had struggled with before, and also boldly challenged difficult problems. His test results had also improved in ways that couldn't be compared to before. His math and science scores were now at the top of the class. But Kenta no longer cared about test scores as much as he had before. He knew that tests were just a tool to check his own level of understanding. After school, Kenta no longer spent his time aimlessly like he had before. He now read books about space at the library and asked the teachers at school questions about space. Kenta also started a study group about space with the friends that he met at the cram school. They were able to deepen their understanding by sharing their knowledge and having discussions. Studying is really enjoyable. Kenta truly thought that from the bottom of his heart. Studying was no longer a pain. It was an enjoyable activity for pursuing his interests and expanding his possibilities. Kenta, who had been a bundle of self-deprecation, was now overflowing with confidence. He believed that he had his own strengths and that he could do anything as long as he pursued his interests. One day, Kenta was approached by Yuto and Shota in the classroom. Kenta, you've really changed recently. You always look like you're having fun, and you're working so hard at your studies. Kenta smiled happily. Yeah, I realized a lot of things. I'm really enjoying studying now. Kenta explained to them how he had changed. The two of them listened to Kenta's story seriously. Maybe I can start to enjoy studying like Kenta, Shota muttered. I think I can learn a lot from Kenta as well, Yuto added. Kenta felt a great sense of joy from their words. Not only had he grown, but he was also having a positive impact on his friends. When he got home, his mom asked him, like she always did, "How was your day?" Kenta replied with a smile, "It was really fun today." His mom smiled, looking relieved when she saw Kenta's smile. "I'm so happy to see that you're having fun, Kenta," she said. Kenta was grateful for his mom's kindness. That night, Kenta opened his encyclopedia again in his room. The encyclopedia was filled with the words of great scholars of the past and study methods. It also included everything that Kenta had learned and experienced until now. Kenta read through his encyclopedia and reflected on his journey so far. The days of hardship, despair, and then hope. Those days were like a roller coaster with a lot of ups and downs. But every single experience had shaped the Kenta that he was now. Kenta had overcome difficulties and had definitely gained the power to carve out his own path in life. He closed the encyclopedia and looked up at the starry sky from the window. There were countless stars twinkling in the night sky. One day, I want to see those stars with my own eyes from space, Kenta said, reaffirming his dream in his heart. Studying is not just a passing point in life. It's an important tool for expanding his potential and realizing his dreams. Kenta was certain of that. Kenta had become a completely different person than he was before. The old Kenta was always insecure and was always self-deprecating. But the new Kenta was full of confidence and believed in his own possibilities. And through studying, Kenta was able to gain the power to overcome difficulties, the power to achieve his goals, and most of all, the power to believe in himself. Kenta's story doesn't end here. Kenta will continue to walk toward his dreams. He might face difficulties, but he will never stop again. That's because Kenta already knows that he can walk on his own 2 feet. See you next video.